All right, let's get started with our conversation tonight. Tonight is all about the steps to building a balanced plate. So, why is this important? Why do we want to have balanced meals in general? Well, most often, what we know through the research is that balanced meals can lead to better blood sugar control, better heart health. It can also lead to more meal satisfaction and lead to more like a balanced, healthy balanced eating pattern that can lead to a healthy weight. So we all know that those are all important things that we are interested in doing for our clients, for ourselves, and all of those pieces. And big picture, when we are eating balanced, it can lead to improved moods. We know that balanced eating leads to better nutrient outcomes as far as making sure there are no nutrition deficiencies. So big thing is it can really balance all of the things that folks are interested in focusing on. But as always, we do want to individualize any sort of eating pattern based off of folks' personal needs, medical conditions, food preferences, and all of those things. So let's dive into how to build a balanced plate. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and here we go. All right, you should be able to see my screen now. So the importance of building out these balanced meals really begins with understanding what a balanced meal looks like. So visually, let's talk about what that is. Well, a healthy plate is one that is used to help visually get our clients looking at their plate and saying, okay, is my plate balanced? We've heard a lot in social media right now that there's been a lot of people saying that we still use the food guide pyramid, and that is inaccurate, right? So we use something called the Healthy Plate. There's several different versions of it. The method that I'm going to walk through is slightly different than the government guidelines, but it is really very similar, and it is focused on balanced eating, incorporating more fruits and vegetables and that sort of a thing. So the Healthy Plate is a tool that does help us build out balanced meals. It also is a method that really helps us visually look at our plate and see how things should look because there's going to be different sections. Now, this is great, but the other piece that a lot of my clients ask, and I'm sure yours do as well, is, well, what if I'm having a casserole? How does that work? Well, that would be kind of moving up that difficulty ladder as far as being able to break down those meals into the different types of foods that are included in the healthy plate. But we've got to start with the foundation. So how is a healthy plate divided up? Well, we know through the guidelines that it is most beneficial to have a quarter of our plate filled with breads, grains, and starches. And so that's going to be a big focus is how do we make sure we're getting a good amount of carbohydrate in a meal, and how do we make sure that it has a good amount of fiber? And that's going to help with, improving bowel regularity, improving heart health, and things like that. Typical guidelines are to get half of our grains as whole grains. The other section that we want to focus on that is carbohydrate containing will be your fruits. So fruits, we want there to be perhaps a serving of fruit on the side of the plate. And then for milk and yogurt, we'll also get some good carbohydrate there. Doesn't have to be required at a meal, but if your clients do enjoy milk or yogurt products, this can be included on the side of the plate. Then we want to fill half of our plate with non-starchy vegetables, and non-starchy vegetables are going to really ensure that we're getting a lot of fiber, a lot of vitamins and minerals, and we're also getting a lot of color on our plate. That's going to change the texture, the enjoyability, and kind of the palatability because it's going to change that meal up over and over and over again because there are so many different types of non-starchy vegetables. Then on the other quarter of the plate, that's where we want to make sure we're getting adequate meat and protein. And choosing lean meats more often is suggested overall for heart health, for maintaining a healthy weight, and just ensuring that we're achieving all of our health goals. And then lastly, we want to include some healthy fats in our meal. This is going to help with palatability. It's also going to make sure that texture of things is really delicious. So including some fats is really important as well. So let's dig into what this means a little bit further. Typically, if you are using the healthy plate method, we do want to encourage 3 balanced meals per day. If folks like eating more frequently than that, then they can actually snack between meals. And some of those components from the healthy plate method can be broken off to be used as snacks between meals based off of hunger cues. Typically, if folks are eating 3 meals per day, the meals may typically be spaced 4 to 5 hours apart. So if somebody wakes up at 6 a.m. and their first meal is at 8 a.m., they may have their next meal at noon to 1, and then their next meal at maybe 5 to 6. So that's really how it may work out if they're doing 3 meals per day and spacing those out a little bit. So let's keep going. Some research does suggest using smaller plates can be helpful for some folks. Sometimes that doesn't work. It's not required. The big thing with the healthy plate is we want to build it out in a way that works for our clients, right? I can't tell you how many times I hear clients say, well, I can never have my favorite foods again. This includes burgers. This includes pizza. This includes pasta. And I just want to show visually how all of those foods can fit. And for this example, we're going to use a burger, right? So for a healthy plate, it can be used on a 9-inch plate. Sure, that could be an example. Somebody wants to use a larger plate, smaller plate, whatever works for them is totally fine, but that can be one target that they may consider for size. Now, if we're starting with that quarter of the plate being grains, breads, and starches, what we want to do is really pick the breads, grains, and starches that they choose. For this example, if somebody wants a burger, that bun can be the carbohydrate or the grain that they want to choose. And for this example, it is just a regular sesame seed bun. Could they make this choice more fiber rich? Absolutely. Absolutely. But is it required? No. So what we want to do is really figure out what their targets are, what their personal priorities are, and adjust things accordingly. Now, I'm going to act like they went to a barbecue here. So, for example, they might actually have access to some watermelon at a barbecue. So on this one, their fruit that they're adding to this meal is going to be some watermelon. And again, sometimes my planning may not always be relevant, but for this example, if somebody wanted maybe a glass of milk at this barbecue, maybe that would be an option. It may not be, so the milk or yogurt might not be something that is included at this meal. Then for our non-starchy vegetables, what we've got covering half of the plate here is green beans. You could include any other non-starchy vegetables that you would want, but I'm also saying that they could include more non-starchy vegetables by putting things on their burger. So for this example, we've got lettuce, onion, and tomato that are going to be actually put on the burger to fill out the non-starchies even more and adding more flavor and texture, vitamins and minerals, and enjoyment to this meal. Next, what we've got is, again, those green beans, and we can add a lot. This has garlic added onto them as well. So again, another great way to flavor out some non-starchy vegetables and fill half of that plate with something that is fiber rich, that's going to lead to really good satisfaction, that's going to lead to better bowel regularity, blood sugar control, and improving heart health as well. Then for our meat and protein, what we've got is a lean hamburger patty over here, and you can see that that's added in. And then if they're wanting an additional fat at this meal, maybe mayo, maybe what they want some mayo on their burger, maybe they want, just ketchup or mustard, whatever works for them. But typically what we're shooting for is, again, that 3 meals per day, spaced 4 to 5 hours apart with snacks between meals as needed. So visually, this is how we would put a balanced meal together, but I want to keep going because sometimes it's really helpful if clients recognize which foods fit in each category, right? That can be very daunting and overwhelming. So I'm just going to share some visuals of some of the foods that would fit in each section of this healthy plate. So let's start with those non-starchy vegetables. These can be really confusing for folks because they may not, sorry, I've got hair in my eye, they may not understand what non-starchy means. So I really feel like a visual like this can be really helpful for folks to pick out the ones that they like. How many of us have clients that say, oh, I don't like vegetables, this is not going to work for me? And then if they had a resource like this, where it's like, okay, circle the ones that you potentially do like, I'm sure that many of them can come up with at least 5 on this list that they do like, and let's start there. That's really what it's about. So they might be able to just recognize a few on this list, but feel more confident in their ability to make some changes with that knowledge. So here's an overview of some non-starchy vegetables, starting all the way up here with the A's, all the way down through the Z's. Is this a full inclusive list? No, but it is a good place to start. There's so many non-starchy vegetables out there, but this can be a good starting talking point. Then next, let's dive into the starches, grains, and breads. So listed at the top, we've got the starchy vegetables, and these, often are a lot of people's favorites. That's great. Is there a way that we can get these more often with more fiber in them? So getting things that are, cooked from whole, less processed versions of these to ensure more fiber. Then for the breads, so many different options for breads and allowing folks to really consider which ones are their favorites. They may, really not like some of these foods, and that helps, reduce some of those options. But then with the grains, they may see that there is a broader variety of grains out there than they've even considered. So this might be a great way to allow them to incorporate different choices of starches, grains, and breads that they may not have considered in the past. So this is an overview of maybe some examples to talk to your clients about, which are starchy vegetables, breads, and grains, including some whole grain options. Next, we've got some meat and protein. This is an overview of some options that your clients may consider. So thinking about these examples when we're breaking it down, we want to know what their preferences are, because this can really help us start building meals out. What if they hate fish and we're suggesting that they're eating salmon, 2 to 3 times per week? That's going to be something that's going to put up a wall. So if we can help them recognize their preferred protein and meat sources right off the bat, then we can help them plug and play as they're building out their meals for their individualization. Next, for milk and dairy, these are some things that they can pick from as well. Now, if they're not interested in using cow's milk, that's great. That's totally fine. There's a lot of milk substitutes and plant-based versions. If that is the case, what we may want to talk to them about is maybe boosting their protein sources from other products. Maybe they need a little bit more of some legumes or beans at their meals, or maybe they need to boost up their protein meat intake to ensure that they're meeting their protein needs for the day if they're not drinking milk or eating yogurt. Then for the fruit, I always tell folks that these fruits, the great thing about them is they have so many different textures and colors and flavors. But the great thing about them is that they also can be used in between meals as snacks. So if folks feel like, I don't feel like having fruit at my meal, this can be a great option where you can add more variety between meals without feeling like you have to be restricting, but they can make you feel very full. And then pairing things like that with a protein or a fat to really align with your health goals. So fruit is a great option, especially for fiber, getting lots of vitamins and minerals, and again, helping with reducing, some cardiovascular disease risk, GI issues. And we also know that these, because of the color, they are a great source of antioxidants that can help reduce inflammation. Next, there are so many different types of fats out there. There's the unsaturated, saturated, and then trans fats. So big thing, this can be a really good conversation starter for folks, is helping them recognize where their favorite fats fit and how that can be impacting their health goals if they want to dig into that information. So unsaturated fats are going to be more of those plant-based versions. That can be vegetable oils, seed oils, that can be avocados or olives. It can be all sorts of different options, but really talking through what their preferred uses are and seeing if there is something that would align better with their goals based off of the science. And then we've got the saturated fats. So most often those are going to be coming from animal products, but we do know that comes from coconut oil and is also coming from palm oil. So talking through those different types of fats and helping them recognize which ones align with their priorities more. All right, and then next we've got different herbs and spices. This can be a great way to get more into that conversation of how these foods can be, or I'm sorry, these herbs and spices can be used to help make meals more flavorful. And if folks are concerned about their blood pressure and they're needing to lower their sodium, these are some really great ways to incorporate flavor at a meal. And you can even teach folks how to make their own herb and spice blends at home. So this is another way just to help with building out that balanced plate. So when we have all of that information from our clients, we know what the healthy plate looks like. We're more familiar with their food preferences based off of the foods that we've talked them through. Then what we can do is we can line things out using that healthy plate method. So what non-starchies do they want to include at their meal? What protein, what starch, grain, or bread do they want to include? What milk and yogurt? And what fruits do they want to include, as well as those healthy fats? And then we can start plugging and playing. So when folks are asking for meal plans, this is one strategy that we can use to really help them build out some balanced meals, increase their confidence, and actually be using foods that they prefer. So this is a visual of a complete healthy plate. So I'm just going to walk briefly through. And I went through this last week in the live, but I'll just go through it briefly today. So we're starting with the starches. We've got 2/3 cup of rice for 2 servings. We've got a cup of milk and a cup of mixed berries. We've got 3 ounces of chicken. We've got a cup of greens, and we've got a cup of steamed California vegetables. So with this, and then the fats that were used to cook the vegetables and the protein, this is a balanced and complete healthy plate. And based off of the calculations I was able to do last week, we know that this meal is around 665 calories for this meal, and it's a big volume of food. So for some folks, this may be too much of a volume. So for them, it might be as easy as using these types of foods in between meals as snacks if they're trying to kind of eat more consistently throughout the day. So that is an overview of how we can build out the balanced plate using the healthy plate method. So if you do have any questions, please go ahead and drop them in the chat now. And if you do have them, if you're watching the replay, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat below, and I'll be sure to come back to them. I'm going to go to the chat now and see if I am missing anything. I don't see anything right now, but let me refresh again really quickly. Okay, I hope that this has been really helpful for everybody. And for those that are here live, thank you so much for being here. Again, if you do have any questions, drop them below. We can continue the conversation after the live ends, but I appreciate you all so much. Thank you so much for coming. And again, have a wonderful week ahead. Take good care. Talk to you soon.